I don't care what REM told me, because it's the end of the world as we know it, and I definitely don't feel fine. The land of Euralia is torn by war, and the dark god Vodun has been summoned to usher in the apocalypse. And now the Harbinger is going to need to relive the same day over and over until she's able to crack the case and save the world. That's the conundrum found in Omensight Definitive Edition, a recently released Switch game that is an intriguing cross between Rashomon and Groundhog Day. We not only see the same events from multiple points of view, but then we use that knowledge to save the world from total destruction. It's a crazy plan, but with the Harbinger hacking and slashing her way through the space-time continuum, it just may be crazy enough to work. Omensight has one of those stories that sucked me in right from the opening seconds. It takes place in a fantasy world that is exactly one day away from the apocalypse. You play the Harbinger, a silent observer who's able to repeat that day in an effort to see the same events from several different points of view. Her goal is to not just piece everything together, but also manipulate the situation just enough to save everybody from a fiery death. What the Harbinger quickly discovers is that this fantasy world is being split by wars and conflict. Her plan is to follow 4 key players in this war, each with information that sheds new light on the investigation. We learn about Draga, a general in the Pegarian forces who's completely oblivious to the danger she's in. There's also Ludimir, an old bear who's drawn into the conflict after tragedy strikes. And don't forget about Radika, a rodent leader who channels her mystic powers through song. It's these 3 characters, along with a 4th that's introduced late in the story, that hold all of the secrets and, with a little trickery, can help blow the case wide open. The hard part is getting that information. This is one of those mysteries where everybody is a suspect, and each twist will make you point the finger at somebody else. The trick is to spend the whole day with each of these characters in an effort to suss out the useful information and then rewind time and use it to further the investigation with another character. You'll keep rewinding time and manipulating the 4 chess pieces until you have all the evidence you need to save the world. From a storytelling perspective, this is actually a pretty clever conceit. We're not just repeating the same day and making different decisions, but also seeing the day from multiple perspectives. This is a great way to both build up the fantasy world and also make me care about what happens to these sympathetic heroes. I found the mystery to be gripping and couldn't wait to see how the information I learned from one character can change the outcome of another character. The whole time-bending story is the real reason to play this game. Of course, there are some inherent problems with telling this kind of story. While this is good from a narrative perspective, it can make some of the gameplay elements feel a bit repetitive. The problem is that you're only fighting through a few different locations and seeing them all play out the same way. Sure, you'll be able to open up new parts of these stages, but there's a general repetition to the action that just can't be avoided. And that repetition isn't just confined to the settings, but also the combat. This is a button-mashy brawler that reminds me a lot of a stripped-down God of War. The Harbinger has a number of multi-hit combos, as well as a few spells that can do everything from slow down time to grab bombs from across the room. The combat is fast, and there are quite a few different types of enemies to fight, but it's also incredibly repetitive and in need of extra depth. I found that I would tackle pretty much every battle the same way, and it usually meant dodging everything until I could just slow down time. Unfortunately, the biggest foe in this game isn't Vodun or the world coming to an end, but rather the rampant technical problems. Although it says Definitive Edition, this Switch version of Omensight feels like it could break at any point. The frame rate is all over the place, the action will freeze at weird times, and the game will crash at the worst possible moments. This is made even worse when you realize that you're going to have to play the entire level over again from the very start. And don't even get me started on the far too common load screens that'll cut people off in the middle of a conversation. This is one of those games that feels like it needs a little extra time in the oven. This is a shame, because there's so much here that I want to recommend. I was immediately won over by the story conceit and was glued to the screen from start to finish. I loved the characters and how I kept having to reassess their involvement in the apocalypse. I like the stylish graphics and feel like they strike a perfect balance between cartoony and serious. Omensight has one of those stories that's really going to stick with me, and it makes me very excited to see what developer Spearhead Games has in store for us next. don't let the crummy performance and technical issues keep you away from Omensight Definitive Edition, because this little Switch game offers an epic story with a truly unique structure. The conceit is so clever that part of me hopes the developers will rip it off, at least in part. From the characters, to the combat, to the many, many twists, there's a lot to like about Omensight. Unfortunately, the Harbinger may be able to stop the world from ending, but she's completely useless when it comes to rampant performance problems. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now here's the question I have for you. What do you expect from a definitive edition? Are you just looking for all the content or something more? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. In other news, I'm currently hard at work on actual 2019 games, so expect reviews of those shortly. We're also going to be debuting a new trivia game show in a few hours. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.